Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Habitual Excellence, presented by Value Capture. I'm Mark Graban, and our guest today is Timothy Pehrson. He's the president and CEO of INTEGRIS Health, based in Oklahoma. Tim, how are you?
I'm great. Great to see you, Mark.
That's great to have you here on the podcast. And, we've met, 2010 or so?
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a while. We're getting older.
That is true. And there's been, we've crossed paths at Lean Healthcare Transformation Summit events, and I'm glad we'll get to talk about what you were doing back then and what you've been doing in recent years there at INTEGRIS Health. Can you first, Tim, maybe tell the audience about your professional background, a little bit about your career path, and how you were first introduced to continuous improvement? Was there a particular aha moment or moments that were important to you?
Yeah, thank you. I've been doing this for a number of years. Started out I've worked for three different health systems before INTEGRIS Health, 2 health plans. Worked in the medical group setting and in the hospital setting. So I've kind of had a broad range of opportunities. I've been here at INTEGRIS Health for 3 years, believe it or not. And INTEGRIS Health is a $2.3 billion health system. We're the largest health system in Oklahoma City, 18 hospitals, over 600 employed providers, large clinically integrated network of 1,300 providers. And so it's been a lot of fun to be here in Oklahoma. I came here by way of Intermountain Healthcare. I was there for 18 years, which is where I got kind of introduced to continuous improvement. And I guess just in answer to your question, how did I get involved in continuous improvement? I was the CEO of a hospital called McCady Hospital in Ogden, Utah. And we were obviously a large employer in that area, and we had a health plan through Intermountain called Select Health. At that time, it was called IHC Health Plans, but we Autoliv was a client of Select Health, and so I was charged with many of my responsibilities to make sure I shepherded that relationship. So I was talking to my management engineer at the time. He said, "Hey, we got to go down and take a look at what Autoliv's doing. It's pretty cool." And so I thought, well, I got to be there anyway to kind of establish and strengthen relationships. So sure, let's go down there. Wasn't anticipating that would change the trajectory of my career at all. But what I saw was just amazing. I mean, and you've been there. So many people have been there. They really can see their work. You know what good looks like. I mean, I'm not an auto airbag guy. And yet I could see all the spots through the entire shop floor that were having problems, that were winning that very day. And I said, man, I've got to figure out a way to get that into healthcare. At the time, there was very few that were doing this. Virginia Mason, you had Theta Care, a little bit of Denver Health, but that was really it. And so, so I started just piloting around in non-clinical areas and just seeing some amazing results. And so that was in 2006. So by 2009, my responsibilities expanded. I was the CEO of the North region at that time with a handful of hospitals. And so I was trying to figure out an operating system for that region. And we rolled that, we kind of created an operating system, plugged and played. And eventually that became the way we were doing our work. And it worked so well. We performed so well on all the measures, safety, quality, experience, et cetera, in a very short period of time that, eventually my boss at the time was the CEO of the system, Laura Kaiser. She's at SSM now, but she said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're just doing continuous improvement."
Yeah.
And so eventually that led to me leading that for the entire system. I held a dual role. I was still the CEO of the North region, but also was the CEO of continuous improvement for Intermountain. Intermountain had a long history of clinical improvement through Dr. Brent James. So
right.
I mean, there's a lot of really good ground plowed, I must say, but there was not a single operating system that Intermountain flew under with that. And so I was fortunate to work with amazing people like Brian Crowell, who you know well, Scott Saxton, Matt Pollard. These are all guys that we worked together and created what now is called the Intermountain Operating Model. And it really just drives broad scale improvement across the entire organization. So when I arrived here, I'm like, of course, we're putting together this operating system at INTEGRIS Health, and it's been really fun to see how quickly things have accelerated here at INTEGRIS Health using these principles that I learned from all over the place, right? And I became a quick student of going to Virginia Mason, Seattle Children's, anywhere, Theta Care, any of these places that I could go learn from. But we didn't stop there. We went out to lots of manufacturers, locally as well as nationally, just to see what they were doing. And then we pulled it into healthcare and applied what worked. And so I feel very fortunate to have learned from so many smart, good people. And I got lots more to learn from people. So I'm excited for this pandemic to get done so we can get out and start seeing what other good things people are doing.
Yeah, and later we'll bring the conversation back to some of the lessons learned from the pandemic times and what you see coming ahead. Maybe first looking back a little bit more. You mentioned Matt Pollard for one. He was regular listeners will know he was our guest in episode 38 of this podcast series. And if people haven't heard that episode, they can go find it in their podcast app. But I want to go back and touch on Autoliv for a minute, just as a follow-up question there. Going through a manufacturing facility, what were the things that jumped out to you as an outsider? I wanted to know if you could elaborate on this idea of knowing if you're winning or not. Are things normal or abnormal? What were the methods that were apparent to you, and how have you incorporated that into healthcare settings?
Yeah, so they had amazing visual systems. So you could you literally walk and poke your head above the manufacturing floor. You could see that cell was in red status. And then they had a whole set of standard work that would happen at the time. So that was one. And then the way that's been manifested in the way that I've tried to lead is, I think it's really important for organizations. In fact, I think it's the very first thing you should do if you're committed to go down this path, is to create your operating system framework. It needs to be very simple, but yet have enough meat and be complex. So, one of the key systems that we have here at the INTEGRIS Health Way is visualization, right? So, and it's training. How do you know what good looks like? So we clearly have huddle boards. That's sort of become the standard now. It seems even with people who don't do lean, they put huddle boards up. But the whole idea is to daily see winning and losing. Now, that's the very rudimentary approach to visual systems. It's a great one, but it's the very beginning. Where I've seen it be even better is when the frontline caregivers, physicians, and nurses start understanding visualization, that they start using these visual cues that they create in patient rooms that help them see, this is a sepsis patient and I've got to hit this bundle of care in certain time frames. And then, being able to save lots of lives. I mean, we were able to save, 100 or so lives of people on sepsis that would have otherwise died had we not lowered or not improved the rate of the sepsis bundle. So it's just stuff like that around the entire enterprise that really helps bring to life some of what I saw at Autoliv. I'd still say we're very young and in doing this, and people haven't fully captured it because it's so human centric in the delivery of care. But there are so many applications, and if you think of a busy nurse or physician, the ability to remember all the things that are going on and the EMR, but if you can have something that visually cues them to behaviors or things that they need to do, it really can make a significant difference in the outcomes for the patients.
Yeah. And, it's always great to hear about an outcome like saving lives and preventing harm. And my recollection of that Autoliv tour was how safety really was the top focus because they're in the business of saving lives. Product quality matters. The airbag that we take for granted that's not too far from our chest as we drive down the road. But then because there are explosives, there's potential risk to employees. And I think that's driven home from a visit like that to where I think that's another idea. I'd love to hear maybe a little more from you on how that focus is transferable. You said safety, quality, experience. Like my roots in manufacturing are on safety, quality, delivery. We get the access to care, and then cost being an end result.
Absolutely.
Of those other things.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of the things that I believe that I believe in trying to establish a zero harm culture, and when I got at INTEGRIS Health, that was the first thing we worked on, safety. And, I was told by everybody, read Michael Watkins' great book, The First 90 Days. Everybody should read that if they're going to do a new role. It's just awesome. But, he's like, don't do anything for the first 90 days. Just listen. And so I got here to INTEGRIS Health and I'm, doing all what you do, going out. And I'm like, oh, man, I can't see safety winning and losing opportunities in real time. And one of the key loop closure systems that we had developed at Intermountain was this daily tiered escalation huddle where every single day we got information all the way to the CEO of what was going on from a safety, quality, lots of different measures, but those are the key ones, right? And so I got into it, and it was literally, I got here August 1st, and I think we started the daily tiered escalation huddles end of September. September 27th. I've got a little cheat sheet in front of me to remember find the way to. But so I didn't wait my 90 days, and the whole purpose was around building a culture of safety, and it's been pretty interesting. That was the first thing I said. We are going to be a safe organization for our caregivers and for our patients. We've reduced serious safety events from the baseline of what we were looking at over 70%. Now, obviously, we've learned in the process that there are more events that we need to capture. So we're capturing all of those. But from the baseline events that we were really capturing, we've made a significant improvement. Our caregiver injury rates, our OSHA recordable rates are half of, are better by half than the healthcare industry. We are about right where construction is, not quite at oil and gas, which, in Oklahoma, you got to be thinking about that. So, this is something that pervades everything that we talk about. It's, it's our very first pillar of trust is safety. And we're always talking, everybody has caregiver safety and patient safety on the top of their huddle boards that they're always talking about. And obviously lots of systems built around to try and drive that home.
Yeah. It's just a follow-up question when it comes to those daily tiered escalation huddles. That's something a lot of value capture clients use, a lot of other healthcare organizations use. What are the types of things that need to get escalated to you as a CEO?
Yeah. So, what I started off with here, what I did multiple times at Intermountain, what I did, and I consulted a little bit as well, is I always said, think about the core, I call them pillars, but whatever people call them, 5, whatever's at the work site, in manufacturing, but what are those areas? And then the things that you need to know. So in the case of INTEGRIS Health, it's safety, quality, experience, affordability, engaged caregivers, access. Those are the things that we think about all the time. So then it's just asking yourself, what are the key elements that you need to know that you think that you can impact, either because culturally you want the organization to know that or whatever. So obviously for me, it was caregiver injuries, serious safety events were the first things. We've layered on other things as we've matured And we continually look at it. Every once a quarter, we just have a standard work process that we just go back and say, okay, is the stuff that we are asking people to escalate still relevant for us? And if it's not, we pop it off. And if it is, if there's something new, we put it on. But we try not to make it long. I mean, it needs to be about 15 minutes, no longer than 15 minutes. And you're not trying to problem solve right there. So you're just trying to understand it and then making sure that it gets into the escalation systems that you can follow up. And so here's the crazy thing the first month that I was here, I'd hear from caregivers. I'd be out talking to them and they'd say, I can't believe, I've been talking to somebody about this staircase or this hill where people were parking. There was no stairs there and people were slipping and falling all the time, coming to work. And we've now got a staircase there, and they started seeing, hey, we are really serious about this. Yeah. And so then we could start to harness their creative genius in helping us solve these problems. Because I can't see this from a C-suite perspective. I'm the least person to know what to solve from a safety perspective, but I can put systems in place that facilitate harvesting the great minds of people that are our caregivers. And that's what this daily threat escalation stuff has done.
Yeah. So how do you and the other leaders at INTEGRIS strike a balance between asking people to escalate things for help or for just so you can be aware versus encouraging people to get better at problem solving on their own and engaging everybody in daily improvement? How does that best coexist?
Yeah, so we try to educate just by doing the process. So if someone escalates something up that is something that can be handled there, we just say, hey, that's an issue you guys can handle. We don't need that escalated up. And you do that a handful of times and people just sort of start to figure that out, that that it can be solved. But if it's something that crosses multiple departments, then that's something that's very appropriate because they then are not going to be able to solve it on their own.
Mm-hmm. So there's some feedback cycles and people
Absolutely.
get more comfortable and better at kind of filtering what to problem solve or maybe they try problem solving it and then they escalate it if they're stuck.
Right. And the other thing is we have, I have two of the systems of our INTEGRIS Health Way operating system. One is daily improvement. So that's idea systems, right? So that's a problem solving mechanism, but it's very visual and tactile for people. Everybody has an idea board. You've seen them. I think I saw them at ThetaCare, and that's a cool thing and brought it in. But, so there's that. They know how to problem solve and they start to get in that rhythm there. And then we actually have a problem solving system. And so we try to train, okay, at the front line, they don't need to know, significant high level problem solving tools. They just need 5 whys, some of the basics things that they can just do right there. So we provide that framework of problem solving for them. And then it's easy to kind of navigate people within that. Oh, hey, that actually looks like that's a pretty big problem. That looks like it's a level 2 problem solving issue. We need to get some experts who have some lean training or some Six Sigma training to tackle that one. But that's just use a 5 why. That's something that you can do on your own. So those having the systems in place, which is why I said that's, I think, really what health systems and companies need to start is to say, what is your operating system or model? And then you can teach to that model as you learn by doing. That's seemed to be successful wherever I've been.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's not enough for an executive just to tell people, thou shalt go do improvement. There's got to be a little bit of methodology that comes with the leadership, the encouragement, the energy that comes from leaders.
Absolutely. Culture is intentional and continuous improvement is intentional. And what I say or what I don't say sets the tone for that. And so if you don't have a framework, you're going to struggle. And you can talk about, hey, we got to continuously improve. But if you don't have a way for them to do that, you're going to be, there's too much friction in the organization for that to be successful and for people your caregivers to just grasp on and get excited about it. I mean, that's what you're really after. That's the thing that I saw at Autoliv, going back to Autoliv, is, I mean, they were implementing one new idea per employee per week.
Right.
That's amazing. I mean, I've been able to get that here at INTEGRIS pretty darn close to one implemented idea per employee per year. At Intermountain, we were about at maybe 2 implemented ideas per employee per year. So, I mean, to think about having 52 of those.
Well, and
boy, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, and Autoliv had probably been at that for a couple of decades of building that culture and the habits and making sure that it's not bureaucratic, I think, is one of the other key lessons from a place like Autoliv. Make an improvement, test it, evaluate it, document it. Like, it doesn't have to be overly complicated.
Yes. Absolutely.
So there at INTEGRIS, when it comes to the daily improvement approach, how do you measure participation and then impact of that daily improvement activity driven by people at the front line or real close to it?
Yes, so I think it's really important in the daily improvement system that you have improvement expectations. So people do need to submit ideas and implement them. And number 2, you need to track them. You need to track the implemented ideas because it's a great way to celebrate. So we actually have a tracker. We build a tracker and we know where we are. We know where the target is on the number of goals that we're trying to get. And then we try to really celebrate them in a number of different ways. We have a regular email communication where we highlight every other week, an idea, and then a safety share is the opposite week. But that idea, highlighting someone with the idea card, a little description of what they did, and then an attaboy, attagirl. And then one of the systems in the loop closure system that we use is a thing called work site reviews, where we're going physically to the work site, seeing and talking to people. And so it's like an awesome thing to be able to do, not only just from me, but like from the manager, to be able to pull off an idea and say, Martian, nice job, high five. And that sort of reinforcement is huge. And I'll say the other thing about daily improvement that was life-changing to me, when I would go out and round on my hospitals and clinics and so forth, before I had this operating system, I'd come back with, a list of a bunch of ideas that people gave me of how they could, because you'd ask them, how you doing? Do you have the tools you need to do your job well? Blah, 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 all the Studer stuff that he taught you to do.
Right. I'd
come back with this list, and then I would send emails out to the manager, and then I'd have to put ticklers in place. And I was so overwhelmed by the time I got back. So once I had the idea systems and the daily improvement system, somebody would come up to me when I'm out there and they'll say, oh, I'd really like to be able to fix this. And I said, well, do you have an idea on that? No, I'd walk over to the idea board, flip up a card, and I'm like, write that down. That's awesome. And when I come back here, I see a lot of people. When I come back here, you need to remind me of how this turned out, because I'm really interested. All of a sudden, I've taken the accountability off of me and off of the 25 people that I'm going to send emails to that individual caregiver now to shepherd that idea with a little bit of encouragement from me or from any other leader in the organization. So that sort of has helped reinforce and then underscore the importance of that. And that's where we've seen significant involvement in our idea systems.
Yeah. So Tim, I wanted to ask about some of your thoughts and reflections on this pandemic phase. It sounds like, roughly speaking, your 3 years there at INTEGRIS was very pre-pandemic and now post-beginning of pandemic. What are some of your reflections looking back in terms of what happened, lessons learned, other reflections that you might want to share?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, our caregivers are amazing. Our physicians, our nurses, our techs, our frontline food services people, environment. I mean, they were amazing. They're the heroes. We did everything to support them, to help them be safe and so forth. But they were the people grabbing the fire hoses and rushing into the building and climbing 12 floors and putting out fire. I mean, it was inspirational, still is inspirational. my heart goes out to them. I mean, caregivers across the country are really, suffering mentally, anguish. They're still trying to get their heads around all the death and difficulties that they saw. While most of us were sitting on Zoom meetings, they were in the thick of it. So
Right.
I'm just reminded of how noble and amazing these people are that chose to be clinicians and other healthcare workers for their life's work. They're inspirational, and we need to do everything. I mean, we're trying our best to wrap our arms around them and provide mental health services and other things to try and rejuvenate them. But I think just as a community, we sort of are like, hey, we're out doing our normal thing, and we're grateful they did what they did, but we're moving on. You need to be saying thank you, because these people need to hear it. They've shed a lot of tears on behalf of the community, and while they're caring for our grandma, who we weren't able to love and say goodbye to when she passed. They were the ones that were there holding their hands in masks, telling them it's going to be okay. And
Right.
so, again, I'm just so thankful to work with these people and grateful for their service. It's just inspiring. But so I would say the other thing that was really interesting, and I had it in spades, because by that time when it hit, we'd been doing this for about a year and a half. So maybe I give you a little bit of perspective. So I told you I got here in August. In the end of September, we started daily tiered escalation huddles. But then in October, when I was here the 90 days, I said, okay, here's my vision. We're going to do this operating system, right? So I waited my 90 days. Here we are. And then the rollout of all of what we were going to do, not all of it, but just the basics. So like idea systems, huddle boards, daily huddles, some work site reviews, things of that nature that would kind of keep the ball rolling. We rolled out in January. And by January, we had almost 700 huddle boards up and running everywhere across the entire enterprise. So, that's basically 6 months. So the next year, we were maturing and growing and learning in that process, which is, it's a total learn by doing type of thing. And then the pandemic hits. Well,
Right.
I will tell you, if we did not have that operating system in place, it would have been a nightmare. I mean, we were able to do things quickly. We already were in the rhythm of acting much more quickly than the organization had ever acted, by virtue of the daily tiered escalation huddles, just by virtue of having visibility of what was going on in the organization. And so, it made, the pandemic was nothing of it was easy, but this made it much easier than it would have been had we not had this in place. And I had people, unsolicited, say that to me multiple times throughout this process is, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful we've got this in place. So, and then, just kind of coming out of the pandemic, it's going to be even more important because there's still so much work to be done in terms of improvement, in terms of safety. We need our caregivers, which is an area of focus, to be engaged and refreshed. And so for us to be thinking about ways and having KPIs that we can think about how we can help them, I think it's just going to be really critical. So, but grateful that we're on the other side. Hopefully people will keep getting vaccinated so that we can get this Delta variant under control and we don't have to go back down on lockdown or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of those reflections about pandemic times. And, we've heard similar reports and some people on this podcast talking about how a previous foundation of continuous improvement or a management system or an operating model, whatever language they were using, was really helpful in terms of being able to respond to new needs, creating new processes, new situations, not just improving what had been done before, but helping quickly, ramp up new ways of work. And is there anything from the pandemic that becomes, in a positive way, part of a new normal from any of that improvement or innovation, or is it just a matter of keeping at it now, maybe with the ability to have some renewed energy?
I think the thing that I hope will be a lasting legacy of this is we can do hard things, and we can do them fairly quickly. And in fact, I was talking to my chief nurse, and she's like, I'd love to be able to keep what we had going, in the sense that we could understand what was going on, make decisions, and move, and do it, try it, experiment, right? And then if it didn't work, we just quickly said, okay, failure's okay, let's just try again and do something different. So I think that I'm hopeful that what will come out of this is, whatever the challenges are in front of us, we can do it. If it's a safety problem, if it's a quality issue, if we're trying to expand evidence-based practice of care, if it's trying to solve the cost, we can do this. Like we just did something that only happens once in a generation, and we did it pretty well. It wasn't perfect, but we did it pretty well, and so I think just knowing that we can do hard things will help us propel to continuously improve. So I think that that's going to come out of this, and I hope that sets the tone for the next 20, 25 years in the way we approach our continuous improvement.
Yeah. Well, Tim, maybe one last question here, because when we have the opportunity to ask a CEO on this podcast or in other settings about their role within the context of something like the INTEGRIS Health Way, or continuous improvement or lean methods, whatever language is used. And I think here with you, we've got a unique opportunity to maybe hear some of your thoughts, because in the previously you had dual roles,
right?
Regional hospital CEO and having that VP of continuous improvement role at a system level. And I had a chance to visit INTEGRIS Health once, a couple of years before your arrival. I know there were ongoing continuous improvement activities, and I've met some of the people who are leading that and are still there. So how do you navigate and delineate, the role, your role as CEO, and then maybe people that are a little bit more the deeper specialists of, let's say, a vice president of continuous improvement? How do you work together with somebody in that role?
So I would say, first of all, if you have the right operating system, continuous improvement is fractile and scalable. And, I actually tell my kids, and I've got kids that are young professionals and doing different things. And I say, listen, take these principles and apply it where you live. Yes, there will be limitations. There will be friction, because you have to deal with that in the broader context of an organization. But you will be successful in your areas because you'll know what success looks like, and you'll be working continuously to improve on that, right?
Yeah.
So that's the fractile part. The scalable is, there was a time where in the lean circles there was a lot of chatter about go a mile deep and an inch wide, and I think that's absolutely a mistake. And that may be where you sit. Maybe that's all you can do, right? But like wherever you are, the largest influence you have, go as wide as you can and go as deep as you can, because it's a learn by doing thing. And if you've got the right operating model, and the operating model is simple to grasp and understand some basic concepts, but mature enough to be able to have some depth as you become more mature as an organization, it becomes a powerful way to drive broad scale improvement. So as the CEO, so I mentioned I got here in August. By January, we had almost 700 huddle boards, idea systems with daily transformation huddles happening, implementing thousands of ideas in the first couple of weeks. It's just unbelievable, because one of the things that I do have is the power of the bully pulpit, I guess. I get to stand up and say, hey, this is where we're going to go. And people have to be willing to follow. It has to make sense. But I think that CEOs or COOs, somebody at that very top level of the organization, if you want to unleash exponential outcomes, you have to own the culture. You have to set it up for success. It has to be intentional. And if you do that, it's amazing. One of the things, I'd go out and speak at these different conferences, and I'd have people that were a director of lean management or continuous improvement manager, they'd come and they say, how do I convince my CEO to get excited about this? I said, I think the only thing you can do is just do the best you can do where you're at. And at some point, you're going to get noticed. And I mean, that's actually what happened to me, right? I didn't intend to create with other people, but create the Intermountain operating model. And when I started it, I just said, wow, Autoliv's got something amazing. I want a piece of that because I think it's going to help me be successful as the CEO of this hospital. And all of a sudden, this hospital, which had been performing, in the bottom parts of Intermountain, all of a sudden became, top performing, blah, 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 blah type of thing.
Yeah.
And so then people are saying, well, what the heck's going on? And people say, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm not doing it, man. It's the people. I'm just unleashing their creative genius. And then that just snowballed, right? So do what you can do where you stand, lift where you stand, use an operating model, and then grow it. And as you get opportunities for executives to interact with executives, encourage them to when you get the right opportunity, encourage them to help you in that messaging. I was in a transition at Intermountain between two CEOs. Both of them were amazing leaders, great people. One was more, hey, I really support this, but you lead the charge. And the other was, hey, I really support this and teach me what I need to say to lead the charge.
Yeah.
And I can tell you which one went faster from a perspective of driving the broad culture. It was obviously the latter. And so I think CEOs really have a really critical, important role in setting the tone and the culture. And I participate in all this stuff. I mean, I've got my leader standard work right here. I've just been checking it off. When I was sitting at lunch, I was looking at the stuff that I need to do. But, I can't ask people to do stuff that I'm not willing to do. And, I have an idea system and board as an executive team every week. In our leadership team meeting, we spend time vetting our ideas in front of an idea board, just like everybody else. So, if you're going to ask people to do it, you might as well be willing to do it. And then people see you doing it and they're, hey, if this guy believes in it, I'm going to believe in it too.
Well, that's great. Well, Tim, thank you for leading the charge there. And thank you for sharing, because now you're at a point, I know you said earlier, you're going to continue learning, continue improving, but you're at a point now where others are going to listen to this and be inspired and say, well, hey, they're doing some good things. We're going to learn from them. So it comes full circle.
Well, I hope. I tell you, we continue to try and pull as much good stuff from everybody around the country, the world. I mean, there's so many smart people. Why reinvent this wheel? We can learn from each other. And that's obviously what continuous improvement's about, right?
Yeah. Well said. So, Tim, thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. Again, our guest has been Timothy Pehrson. He's the president and CEO of INTEGRIS Health in Oklahoma. I'm looking forward to when the timing and when things have calmed down a bit and when the timing is right to come see some of this firsthand.
Absolutely. Pick a weekend. We'll take you to a good football game too.
That sounds good. Well, thanks again for being our guest here today, Tim.
All right. Take care. Thank you for everything you're doing.